The inside of Nethara was nothing like Cole had expected. He had studied Cathari architecture from intercepted data files and grainy long-range images, but none of it had prepared him for the reality. The walls were alive. They pulsed with a slow, rhythmic movement, like the inside of a giant chest breathing in and out. Veins of bioluminescent fluid ran through the structure, casting everything in a dim blue-green glow that shifted and flickered like underwater light. But the light was fading. Whole sections of the hive had gone dark, and the walls in those places had turned gray and stiff, like dead skin. The air smelled wrong, a sharp chemical tang mixed with something sweet and rotting. Cole's suit filtered most of it, but enough came through to make his stomach turn. He moved through the outer corridors quickly, following the general layout he had memorized during the drop. The royal chamber would be deep in the center of the hive. Everything in Cathari society flowed outward from the queen. She was the heart. The hive was the body. And right now, the body was shutting down. He encountered his first Vraxul pack in a wide tunnel junction. 6 of them, crouched low against the walls, their eyeless heads turning in slow circles as they scanned for movement. They looked like someone had taken wolves apart and rebuilt them with metal and black cartilage. Their limbs ended in hooked claws that could tear through standard armor plating. Their mouths were lined with needle-thin injectors that delivered the neural toxin directly into the bloodstream. Cole had fought these things before. He knew they were fast, but they relied on numbers and fear. One-on-one, a trained Marine with good positioning could take them. 6 at once in an open tunnel was a different problem. He pulled a concussion charge from his belt, set a 3-second delay, and rolled it into the junction. The blast knocked 4 of them off their feet and shattered the bioluminescent veins in the ceiling, plunging the tunnel into total darkness. Cole switched to thermal vision and moved in. His rifle barked 6 times. 6 bodies hit the floor. He kept moving. The deeper he went, the worse it got. Whole chambers had been overrun. He passed through a nursery where thousands of unhatched eggs sat in rows on warm shelves, their surfaces slowly turning cold. Attendant drones lay scattered on the floor, their bodies locked in strange, twisted positions. Without the queen's pheromonal signal, they had simply stopped functioning, frozen mid-step like broken machines. In another chamber, he found Cathari warriors who had turned on each other. Their blade limbs were buried in each other's bodies. Without the queen's calming influence, the soldiers had lost all coordination and fallen into a blind, animal rage. Cole looked at the scene for a long moment, then moved on. There was nothing he could do for the dead. It was in the mid-levels that he heard them. A clicking sound, rapid and rhythmic, coming from a side passage. Not Vraxul, Cathari. Cole raised his weapon and stepped around the corner. He found himself face to face with a squad of Cathari warriors, 7 of them, standing in a defensive formation around a narrow doorway. They were tall, nearly 8 feet, with hard carapaces the color of dark bronze and 4 blade limbs folded tight against their bodies. Their eyes, dozens of small black orbs arranged in clusters on either side of their heads, locked onto him instantly. The one in front, slightly larger than the others with a scarred carapace and a missing limb on the left side, raised its remaining blade limbs and let out a high-pitched hiss. The universal sign for stay back or die. Cole lowered his rifle slowly. He held his empty hands out to the sides and activated his suit's translator. The device struggled with Cathari. Their language was part sound, part chemical signal, and the translator could only handle the acoustic portion. But Cole had spent time studying their court dialect years ago, not for any mission, just because he found it interesting. He had always been the kind of person who learned things just to learn them. He spoke in broken, rough Cathari, The sounds felt wrong in his human throat, too flat, too slow. But the words were clear enough. I am here to help your queen. The warriors went still. The scarred one, their leader, tilted its head in a way that Cole recognized from his studies as deep surprise. No alien had ever spoken their language. No alien had ever been inside the hive. And certainly, no alien had ever claimed to be there on behalf of the Empress. The leader stepped forward. It spoke, and the translator caught most of it. I am Vikari, sub-commander of the Queen's Inner Guard. You are human. Yes. Humans are small, soft, short-lived. What can you do for the mother of our world? Cole reached into his medical kit and held up the vial of counteragent. I have fought the Vraxel before. I have seen their toxin. This was made to fight it. It was made for humans, not Cathari. But it is the only thing I have, and if we do nothing, she dies. Vikari stared at the vial for a long time. Then he looked at Cole's face, studying it with those dozens of dark eyes. If you harm her, Vikari said, I will open your chest and let your blood water the hive roots. Understood, Cole said. Vikari turned and led the way deeper into the hive. Cole followed. The other warriors fell in around him, blade limbs half raised, watching every step he took. He was surrounded by creatures that could kill him in a heartbeat, walking into the most sacred place their species had ever built, carrying a medicine that might not work, and a hope that probably should not exist. But he kept walking. They descended through levels that grew warmer and darker. The walls here were thicker, older, layered with thousands of years of growth. Cole could feel the hive's heartbeat more clearly now, a deep, slow thrum that vibrated through the floor and up through his boots. It was getting weaker. After nearly an hour of walking, they reached a massive door made of a crystalline material that glowed with a faint inner light. Vikari placed a limb against it, and it opened slowly, revealing the royal chamber beyond. Cole stepped inside and stopped. The chamber was enormous. The ceiling arched high overhead, covered in patterns of bioluminescent veins that formed shapes Cole could not read, but somehow felt were beautiful. The floor was smooth and warm. In the center of the room, on a raised platform of the same crystal as the door, lay Empress Cythara. She was larger than the warriors, nearly 12 feet long, with a carapace that should have been brilliant gold, but had faded to a dull ashen gray. Her limbs were folded beneath her, motionless. Beneath her translucent exoskeleton, Cole could see dark threads of Vraxel toxin pulsing slowly toward her central nerve cluster, like black rivers creeping toward her brain. Around the platform, a dozen royal guards stood in a loose circle. Their movements were jerky and uncoordinated, their formation broken. Without the Queen's signal, they were barely functional, running on instinct alone. Cole walked to the platform and knelt beside her. He could feel the faintest vibration coming from her body, a last whisper of the signal that had once guided billions. Barely. He opened his medical kit and looked at the single vial of counteragent in his hand. 1 dose, designed for a human body, a fraction of her size, against a toxin that had already spread through most of her system. He looked up at Vikari. Tell me where her primary vascular node is. I need to inject this as close to her central system as possible. Vikari knelt on the other side of the Empress. For a moment, the old warrior just looked at his queen, and Cole saw something in those alien eyes that needed no translation. Fear, grief, love. Then Vikari extended a careful limb and pointed to a spot just behind the Empress's head, where the carapace was thinnest. There, he said quietly. Be gentle, human. She is all we have. Cole steadied his hands, positioned the injector, and pressed it against the Empress's body. I know, he said. That is why I am here. The reaction was instant and brutal. Cythara's body seized, Every limb shot outward at once, cracking the crystal platform beneath her. A sound came from deep inside her chest, not a scream, but something lower, something that shook the walls of the chamber, and sent the royal guards staggering backward. Cole was thrown across the room by one of her limbs, hit the far wall hard enough to crack the backplate of his suit, and slid to the floor. For a few seconds he could not breathe. His ribs screamed. His vision blurred. But he could see the Empress still convulsing on the platform, her body twisting, as the counteragent met the Vraxel toxin inside her, and the two chemicals went to war. He dragged himself back to her side. Vikari was already there. His remaining blade limbs braced against the platform, watching his queen with wide, terrified eyes. "What is happening to her?" Vikari demanded. "The medicine is fighting the poison," Cole said through gritted teeth, "but it is not enough. It was made for human bodies. Her system is too different, too complex." He activated his suit's comlink and reached for the Steadfast in orbit. The signal was weak this deep inside the hive, but it got through. Dr. Nora Calloway answered on the second ping. "Cole, what is your status? Your vitals just spiked across the board." "I administered the counteragent. It is working, but only partially. The toxin is too deep in her neural network. The medicine cannot reach all of it. I need options, Nora. Fast." There was a pause. Cole could hear Nora working, her fingers moving across console screens, pulling up everything they had on Vraxel biochemistry and Cathari physiology. When she spoke again, her voice was careful in the way it got when she had an answer that nobody was going to like. "There is one option. The counteragent needs a biological bridge, something that can interface with her neural network and help the medicine reach the parts it cannot get to on its own. A living filter that can draw the toxin out of her system and process it through a compatible host." Compatible how? Human compatible. The counteragent was designed for our nervous system. If a human neural network were linked directly to hers, the medicine could use the human system as a relay point. It would pull the toxin through the link, filter it through the human host, and neutralize it. Cole was quiet for a moment. What happens to the human host? Another pause. Longer this time. The toxin would pass through your nervous system on the way out. It would cause significant neural damage. Pain beyond anything I can describe to you. There is a real chance of permanent nerve damage, paralysis, or death. I cannot give you exact odds, because this has never been done before. Cole looked at the Empress. The convulsions were slowing, but not because the medicine was winning. The black threads of toxin were still advancing, still creeping toward her central nerve cluster. The counteragent had slowed them down, but it had not stopped them. She was still dying, just dying slower. He looked at Vikari. "Is there a way to connect my nervous system to hers?" Vikari stared at him. "You cannot be serious. Is there a way?" The sub-commander was silent for a long time. Then he spoke in a voice that was barely above a whisper. "The bonding tendril. It is used to link the queen to her consorts. It creates a direct neural bridge between two beings. It is the most sacred act in our culture. It has never been performed with an outsider. It is not meant for your kind. Will it work? It will work, but the pain will be beyond what your body was built to endure. And if you die during the link, the shock could kill her as well." Cole sat down on the edge of the platform. He was tired. His ribs were cracked. His back was bruised deep enough that he could feel the heat of internal bleeding through his suit. He thought about Outpost Caden. He thought about the soldiers he had carried out and the ones he had left behind. He thought about the nurseries he had passed on the way down, full of cold eggs that would never hatch. "Do it," he said. Vikari hesitated. Then, slowly, he reached behind the Empress's head and drew out a thin, luminous tendril, a thread of living tissue that glowed with a faint gold light. It was delicate, almost beautiful. "Remove your helmet," Vikari said. "The connection must be direct." Cole unsealed his helmet and pulled it off. The air of the royal chamber hit his face, warm and thick with chemical signals that made his skin prickle. He could smell the Empress now, a scent like burnt honey and old stone. Vicari guided the tendril to the base of Cole's skull, where the spine met the brain. When I attach this, you will feel everything. Her mind, her pain, the minds of every Cathari connected to her network, billions of them. Do not fight it. If you resist, the link will break and we lose her. Cole nodded. I will not fight it. The tendril touched his skin, then it pushed through. The world exploded. He had been shot before. He had been burned, stabbed, and caught in the blast radius of a plasma charge. None of it compared to this. It was not just pain. It was existence, sudden, overwhelming, infinite. He could feel them, all of them, billions of Cathari minds, each one a point of light in an ocean of darkness, each one flickering, fading, crying out for a signal that was not coming. And beneath them all, he felt her. Cythara's mind was vast. It was not like a human mind. It was more like a sky, enormous and deep, stretching in every direction. But it was dark now, full of clouds and poison, and somewhere in the center of it, something ancient and powerful was curled up small, holding on to the last shred of itself. She was afraid. She was alone. She had been the center of her world for centuries, the thread that held billions together. And now the thread was breaking, and she could feel every single one of them falling away. Cole reached for her, not with his hands, with his mind, his will, whatever part of a human being it is that refuses to let go. I am here, he thought. Hold on to me. I am not leaving. It poured through the neural link, out of her system, and into his, a river of black fire that burned through every nerve in his body. His muscles locked, his back arched. Blood ran from his nose, his ears, the corners of his eyes. On the steadfast, Nora watched his vital signs go red across the board and pressed her hand to her mouth. Cole, your neural readings are critical. You need to break the link. He could not answer. He could not speak. Every part of him was on fire, but somewhere inside the inferno, he could feel the toxin moving, leaving her, coming to him. He was pulling it out of her, one black thread at a time, and each thread that left her system was one more light that flickered back on in the vast dark sky of her mind. 11 minutes. That is how long it took. Laura Beckett stood at the bridge console, watching Cole's heartbeat stutter and spike, her hands gripping the rail until her knuckles turned white. Then it was over. The last of the toxin cleared Cythara's central cluster and burned through Cole's system in a final, searing wave. He felt it pass through him and dissolve, neutralized by the counteragent that was still circulating in his blood. The link went quiet. The fire went out. Cythara's carapace blazed with light, gold, brilliant and warm, flooding the royal chamber like sunrise. A pulse of pheromonal energy erupted from her body and radiated outward, through the walls, through the floors, through the miles of living tissue that made up Nethera. It swept across the continent. It swept across the planet. On every corner of Vylora, the Cathari came back to life. Warriors stopped mid-fight and lowered their weapons. Drones stood up from where they had fallen and returned to their tasks. In the nurseries, attendants rushed to the eggs and began warming them again. The hive mind reconnected, billions of threads weaving back to a single, beating heart. The queen was alive. Cole collapsed on the crystal platform. His left hand was shaking. It would not stop. Blood was drying on his face, and his vision came and went in waves. But through the fading link, just before the tendril released him, he felt something from Cythara. Not words, something older than words, a feeling that wrapped around him like warm hands. Thank you. Vicari caught him before he hit the floor. The old warrior held the human soldier in his arms and looked down at him with an expression that had no name in any language, human or Cathari. You are either the bravest creature I have ever seen, Vikari said quietly, or the most foolish. Cole tried to smile. It came out crooked and bloody. Where I come from, he whispered, those are usually the same thing. Then he passed out. Cole woke up in a place he did not recognize. The ceiling above him was curved and warm, made of the same living material as the rest of the hive. But this room was different. The bioluminescent veins in the walls glowed a soft, steady gold instead of the blue-green he had seen in the outer tunnels. The air was clean and sweet. He was lying on something that felt like a bed, but moved slightly beneath him, adjusting to his shape, as if it were alive. His left hand was still shaking. He held it up and watched the tremor. It was small but constant, like a vibration that had gotten stuck inside his bones. He tried to make a fist and managed it, but it hurt. A deep burning ache that ran from his fingertips all the way up to his shoulder. The door opened, and Nora Calloway walked in. She had come down from the Steadfast on a medical shuttle once the Cathari defense grid confirmed a ceasefire. She looked exhausted and angry and relieved all at once. You are an idiot, she said, sitting down beside him. I know. Your left ulnar nerve is damaged, possibly permanent. Your central nervous system took the kind of hit that should have killed you 3 times over. You had a cardiac event during the link that lasted 41 seconds. 41 seconds, Cole. Your heart stopped for 41 seconds. But it started again. Nora closed her eyes and rubbed her forehead. Yes, it started again, because apparently your body is as stubborn as the rest of you. She ran a scanner over him and frowned at the readings, but said nothing more about them. Instead, she told him what had happened while he was unconscious. It had been 2 days. The Vraxel ground forces, cut off from their command structure after the Queen's revival disrupted their control network, had scattered into the deep tunnels beneath the hive. Cathari warrior squads were hunting them down. The surface was secure. The orbital defense grid was being rebuilt. And the galaxy was paying attention. The Galactic Concord had sent 3 observation ships to Vylora's orbit. The elder species, the ones who had held seats on the High Council for millennia, were demanding answers. How had a human soldier ended up on a sealed world? Why had the Terran Federation violated the non-intervention directive? Who had authorized this? Terran Command was in a difficult position. Officially, Cole's mission was unauthorized. Captain Beckett had already submitted her report, carefully written to describe Cole's actions as a solo decision made without orders. She had not lied. She had simply left out the part where she unlocked the drop bay and walked away. The legal division was working on whether to court-martial Cole or give him a medal. The political division was trying to figure out which option would cause less trouble. None of it mattered to Cole. He sat up, winced at the pain in his ribs, and asked the only question he cared about. How is she? Nora looked at him for a moment. The Empress is awake. She has been awake since yesterday. She has been asking for you. Cole got to his feet slowly. Nora handed him a fresh uniform and turned around while he changed. His body was covered in bruises. His back was a map of purple and yellow. But he was standing, and that was enough. Vikari was waiting outside the room. The sub-commander had not left the area since Cole was brought here. He stood against the wall, with his remaining blade limbs folded tight, watching Cole with those dozens of black eyes. The Mother Queen wishes to see you, Vikari said. You will follow me. Cole followed. They walked through corridors that were brighter now, fuller, humming with life. Cathari drones moved in organized streams along the walls, carrying materials, repairing damage, tending to the hive's living structure. Cole could feel the difference in the air. 2 days ago, the hive had felt like a dying body. Now it felt like a body healing. The royal chamber had been cleaned and restored. The cracked crystal platform had been repaired, and the bioluminescent patterns on the ceiling burned with a light that was almost too bright to look at. And there, in the center of the room, Standing upright for the first time in days was Empress Cythara. She was magnificent. Her carapace had regained its color, a deep, burnished gold that caught the light and threw it back in warm reflections. She was tall, towering over Cole by several feet, and her body carried a weight that was not physical. It was presence, the unshakable certainty of a being who had been the center of a world for longer than most human nations had existed. She looked down at him, and Cole felt the faintest echo of the neural link, a whisper of connection that lingered like the last heat of a fire that had burned down to coals. She spoke, not through the translator. Her voice resonated on frequencies that he felt in his chest, vibrations that the chamber walls picked up and amplified. But layered beneath the sound were feelings, impressions, carried on chemical signals that his brain should not have been able to read, but somehow could. The link had changed him. Not much, but enough. "I felt your mind, human," she said. "When the darkness was taking me, you came into it. You did not belong there. It should have destroyed you, but you held on." Cole did not know what to say, so he said the truth. "I could feel them. Your people, all of them. They were afraid, and they were alone, and they were looking for you. I could not let them lose you." Cythara was still for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. "I have lived for 400 years. In that time, no outsider has touched the bonding tendril. No outsider has entered the hive mind. What you did was not simply brave. In our culture, it is something that has no equal. You carried my death inside your own body and gave me back my life. There is a word for this in the old language." She spoke a sound that the translator could not process, a layered chord of clicks and harmonics that resonated in the crystal beneath Cole's feet. "It means one who carries the dying back to the light. No Cathari has earned this name in over 1,000 years. No outsider has ever earned it." Cole stood there, bruised and tired, his left hand shaking at his side, and felt the weight of what she was saying settle on him like something physical. "I did not do it for a title," he said. "I know," Cythara replied. "That is why you deserve it." She turned to Vicari and the assembled court, a growing crowd of Cathari officials, warriors and advisors who had gathered at the edges of the chamber. "Hear me," she said, and her voice carried through the hive like thunder. "The Cathari Empire has been closed to the galaxy for 6,000 years. We closed our doors because we believed that no one outside our world could understand what we are, that no one would come to our aid, that we were alone." She looked at Cole. "We were wrong." The murmur that passed through the crowd was like wind through a forest. Cythara raised a limb for silence. "I am opening formal relations with the Terran Federation. This human, Cole Hayden, who walked into our dying hive alone, who knelt beside me when I was at the edge of death, who took my poison into his own body and gave me back to my people, will be recognized as the Cathari-appointed ambassador to humanity. This title is granted through the bonding rite. It cannot be revoked by any human government. It cannot be taken back." In the Galactic Concord's diplomatic halls, 3 elder species filed formal protests within the hour. The Cathari representative, speaking publicly for the first time in 6,000 years, offered a response that was 4 words long. "A human earned it." 6 months had passed since the night Cole Hayden walked into Nathara alone. He stood on the observation deck of the Terran Cathari Liaison Station, a structure that orbited Valora like a small moon, built in equal parts by human engineers and Cathari bioarchitects. Half of it was metal and glass. The other half was living tissue, warm to the touch, glowing faintly with the gold light that Cole had come to associate with everything Cathari. The 2 halves fit together in a way that should not have worked, but somehow did. His left hand was shaking. It always shook now. Nora said the nerve damage was permanent. She had offered treatments that might reduce the tremor, but none that would stop it entirely. Cole had turned them down. He had gotten used to it. Some mornings, when he wrapped his fingers around a coffee cup and felt the vibration against the ceramic, he almost did not notice it anymore. He had turned down other things too. A medal ceremony on Earth, 2 interview requests from Terran media networks, a personal invitation from the Concord's Secretary General to address the High Council. He said no to all of them. He did not want to stand on stages and talk about what he did. What he did was not complicated. Someone was dying. He went to help. That was the whole story. But the galaxy did not see it that way. The galaxy saw a species that had been sealed away for 6,000 years suddenly open its doors because of one human. The galaxy saw the most advanced bioengineering civilization in known space share its knowledge with the Terran Federation, and only the Terran Federation. The galaxy saw the balance of power shift in a way that no war, no treaty, and no economic agreement had ever managed. Cathari biomedical technology had advanced human medicine by decades in 6 months. Diseases that had been death sentences were now treatable. Neural repair techniques that Nora had called impossible a year ago were now in clinical trials. Cathari agricultural methods were being adapted for human colony worlds, turning barren outposts into self-sustaining ecosystems. In return, Terran military advisors worked alongside Cathari commanders to modernize their planetary defenses, building hybrid systems that combined human weapons technology with Cathari biological engineering. The elder species watched all of this with growing unease. For millennia, they had been the powers of the galaxy. They had set the rules, controlled the resources, and decided who mattered and who did not. Humans had been a footnote, a young species, barely out of their own solar system, too emotional, too short-lived, too soft to be taken seriously. Now the Cathari, one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in existence, had chosen to stand beside those soft, short-lived creatures, and everyone wanted to know why. Cole did not care about any of it. He cared about the work. He spent his days moving between the station and the surface, acting as a bridge between 2 cultures that were still learning how to talk to each other. He translated not just words, but ideas, helping Cathari scientists understand why humans asked so many questions, helping human diplomats understand why Cathari sometimes communicated in silence. It was slow, patient work, and it suited him better than anything he had done in 12 years of military service. Vicari visited the station every few weeks. The old warrior had been promoted to the Queen's personal guard, the highest military honor in the Cathari Empire. He and Cole had developed something that was not quite friendship in the human sense, but was close. They would sit on the observation deck and watch the stars, sometimes talking, sometimes not. Vicari had learned a few human phrases, mostly the ones Cole used most often, which meant the sub-commander's English vocabulary consisted largely of practical words and dry observations about the weather. On one of these visits, Vicari brought a gift. He carried it in both hands, wrapped in a cloth made from hive silk. When he unwrapped it, Cole saw a blade. It was about 14 inches long, made from the same crystalline material as the royal platform, shaped with a curve that followed the natural line of a Cathari honor weapon. But the handle had been reshaped, made smaller, fitted for human fingers. "This is from the dais," Vicari said. "From the place where you knelt beside her. The Empress ordered it made. It is a Cathari honor blade, the first ever made for hands that are not ours." Cole took it carefully. It was lighter than it looked, and warm, as if the crystals still remembered the heat of the royal chamber. He turned it in his hands, and watched the light catch its edge. "Thank you," he said. Vicari nodded. He started to leave, then stopped. "I told you once that you were either the bravest creature I had ever seen, or the most foolish," he said. "I have decided." "Which one?" "Both, but more of the first." Cole smiled. It was a small smile, tired and crooked, the same one he had worn on the floor of the royal chamber, with blood on his face. Vicari made a sound that Cole had learned to recognize as Cathari laughter. Then the old warrior left. That night, alone on the observation deck, Cole felt something, a warmth that started somewhere behind his ribs and spread outward. Not physical, but real as the glass under his hand and the stars beyond it. It was Sithara. The neural link was gone, but something remained, a thin thread of connection that distance could not break. She sent him no words, just a feeling. You are part of us. You will never be alone again. Cole pressed his shaking hand against the glass and watched the light of Velora's sun catch the edge of the honor blade where it sat on the ledge beside him. On the planet below, Cathari children were learning a new story. It was told alongside the ancient myths of queens and wars and the founding of the hive. And it went like this. There was a night when the mother queen lay dying, and the hive was dark, and every voice was falling silent, one by one. The old ones in the sky watched and did nothing. The powerful ones turned away. But from a small blue world far away, a creature came. He was not large. He was not strong by the measure of the galaxy. He lived a short life, and his body was fragile, and he had no reason to come. No one had asked him. No one had demanded it. No treaty bound him. No law required it. But he came anyway. He knelt beside the dying queen, and took her death into himself, and gave her back to her people. And when they asked him why, he said a thing that the Cathari carved into the walls of the royal chamber, so that it would be remembered for as long as the hive stood. Where I come from, you do not leave people behind. Far away, in the Galactic Concord's great hall, the debate over humanity's seat on the High Council had dragged on for months. The elder species argued tradition. They argued precedent. They argued that humans were too young, too reckless, too driven by emotion to be trusted with real power. The Cathari representative, who had sat in silence through every session, finally stood. The hall went quiet. When a species that had not spoken in 6,000 years chose to speak, everyone listened. The representative looked at the assembled delegates and said a single sentence. They run toward the fire. It passed without opposition. Cole did not hear about it until the next morning. Nora told him over breakfast, reading from a news feed on her tablet. She watched his face for a reaction. He took a sip of coffee, steadied his shaking hand against the table, and looked out the window at the stars. Good, he said quietly, and that was all. Because Cole Hayden was not a man who needed the galaxy to tell him that what he did mattered. He had knelt beside a dying queen in a place that did not want him, and he had held on. Not for a title, not for a treaty, not for a seat on a council, because someone was dying, and he was there, and he could help. That was enough. It had always been enough. Outside the window, Veolora turned slowly in the light of its sun, alive and whole, and humming with the voices of billions. And somewhere in its heart, in a chamber of crystal and gold, an empress who had once stood at the door of death, sat on her throne, and felt, through a thread of connection that would never fully break, the steady, stubborn heartbeat of the human who had pulled her back. She smiled, in whatever way a Cathari queen smiles, and the hive hummed a little louder. The Terran patrol ship Steadfast was 3 days into a routine sweep of the outer rim when the distress signal hit. It came in broken pieces, scattered across a dozen frequencies, like someone had smashed a radio and tried to send a message with the broken parts. Captain Laura Beckett stood at the bridge console and listened to it twice before she believed what she was hearing. It was coming from Veolora, the Cathari homeworld. Nobody went to Veolora. The Cathari were an ancient insectoid race that had sealed their borders 6,000 years ago and never opened them. They had no interest in the Galactic Concord, no interest in trade, and absolutely no interest in humans. Every ship that had crossed into their space uninvited had been turned back or destroyed. The Cathari did not negotiate. They did not explain. They simply made it clear that outsiders were not welcome. But now, their defense grid was dark. Laura could see it on the long-range scans. The orbital platforms that had kept the galaxy out for millennia were drifting cold and dead. Wreckage from Cathari warships floated through the upper atmosphere in a slow, silent rain. Something had broken Velora open. The sensor officer pulled up ground scans, and the bridge went quiet. The planet's surface was crawling with Vraxul signatures, thousands of them. The Vraxul were parasites on a galactic scale. They did not conquer worlds through force alone. They infected the ruling class, took control of the leadership caste, and turned entire civilizations into puppets. They had tried it on 3 worlds in the past decade. They had succeeded on 2. Now they were on Velora, and they had already reached the capital hive. Laura opened a secure channel to Terran Command and reported what she was seeing. The response came back within the hour. Observe and document. Do not intervene. Humanity had no treaty with the Cathari. There was no legal obligation, no political reason, and no strategic benefit to getting involved. The Cathari had spent thousands of years telling the galaxy to leave them alone. Command's position was simple. Let them have what they asked for. Laura read the orders to her senior staff in the briefing room. Most of them nodded. It was not their fight. The Cathari would not have helped humanity if the situation were reversed. Everyone knew that. Sergeant Cole Hayden sat in the back row and said nothing. Cole was 34 years old. He had served in the Terran Marines for 12 years. He had fought the Vraxul before, at a place called Outpost Caden, where a small garrison held a mining colony against a Vraxul raiding force for 9 days. Cole went in with 16 soldiers. He came out with 7. The ones he lost did not die clean. The Vraxul toxin took them apart from the inside, rewiring their nervous systems until they turned on their own squad. Cole had to put down 2 of his own people before the relief force arrived. He never talked about Caden, but he never forgot it either. After the briefing, Cole went to the armory. He checked his combat suit, loaded his weapons, and filled his medical kit with everything it could hold, including a single vial of Vraxul counteragent that the field medics had developed after Caden. It was designed for human biology. It probably would not work on a Cathari, but probably was better than nothing. He walked to the drop bay and started prepping a solo insertion pod. Laura found him there 20 minutes later. She stood in the doorway and watched him work for a long time before she spoke. "You know I cannot authorize this," she said. "I know," Cole said. He did not stop working. "If you go down there, you go alone. No backup, no extraction. If the Cathari do not kill you, the Vraxul will. And if you somehow survive both, Command will court-martial you the moment you step back on this ship." Cole loaded the last magazine into his kit and sealed it shut. He looked at her. "Captain, their queen is dying. If she dies, every Cathari on that planet dies with her. That is billions of lives. I have sat and watched a world fall apart once before. I am not doing it again." Laura held his gaze for a long moment. Then she turned and walked away. She did not lock the drop bay. She did not alert security. She went back to the bridge and told the watch officer that Sergeant Hayden was running a solo equipment diagnostic in the lower deck and was not to be disturbed. The drop pod launched 7 minutes later. Cole hit the atmosphere hard. The pod shook and screamed as it tore through layers of smoke and ash. The Cathari capital hive, Ithara, rose from the surface like a mountain made of bone and living tissue. It stretched miles into the sky, a structure grown over thousands of years by countless generations. From orbit, it had looked damaged. From inside the atmosphere, it looked like it was bleeding. Great cracks ran along its surface. Vraxel burrowing tunnels had punched through the outer walls in dozens of places, and a dark fluid was leaking from the wounds. Cole landed on a ridge 2 miles from the main entrance. He could hear the fighting from where he stood. The sharp clicking of Cathari bladelins, the wet screech of Vraxel attack drones, and underneath it all, a low vibration that he felt more than heard. It was the hive itself, shaking like a living thing in pain. He checked his rifle, sealed his helmet, and started walking toward the hive. He did not know if the Queen was still alive. He did not know if his counteragent would work. He did not know if the Cathari would let him close enough to try, or if they would cut him down the moment they saw an alien face inside their most sacred place. He knew only one thing: someone was dying, and he could not stand still. The smoke closed around him as he walked. Behind him, high above in orbit, Laura Beckett watched his signal move across the tactical display. A single green dot, walking alone, into a sea of red. She whispered something under her breath that the bridge crew pretended not to hear. "Come back alive, you stubborn fool." Cole did not hear her. He was already gone, swallowed by the hive, moving deeper into a world that had never wanted him, and now needed him more than it had ever needed anything.